Not all orphans of the Middle Ages were of royal blood, however.
Rogan?
Society was rigorously divided into sections of those who farmed, those who fought, those who frocked, and those who never mind. For all the melodrama associated with the royal class, death among the peasants was far too common. Men frequently died in wars, women frequently died in childbirth, and there must have been an overabundance of orphans in the time. I'm covering a lot of history here, and of course there's a lot of overlap, but the peasants passed down their own stories in an oral tradition. But these aren't your Mickey Mouse fairy tales. This was back when Red Riding Hood gets eaten by the wolf, and that's the end. And the Little Mermaid doesn't find true love, she just dissipates. Take the story of the juniper tree. A mother gives birth to a son and dies. And then the husband remarries, and the second wife gives birth to a daughter. But the second wife is jealous of the son. She tells the boy to put his head in a chest, and when she quickly closes the lid, it decapitates him. The second wife then convinces her own daughter that she is in fact guilty of the boy's murder. Then she cooks the boy's flesh and serves it as black pudding, which the father eats. The daughter buries her stepbrother's bones underneath a juniper tree. A bird flies out, and it kills the second wife by dropping a millstone on her head. The boy comes back to life, and they all live happily ever after, except for the decades they spend sorting through their childhood trauma. What this story does show is the evil stepmother, which is present in many peasant folktales. Admittedly, there are many versions of these stories, but let's look at one interpretation of Hansel and Gretel. They're from a poor family, their mom dies, their father remarries, and their stepmother forces him to abandon them in the woods. They find the gingerbread house, and the witch plans to eat them. Instead, they trick her and burn her alive. They take jewels from her house and return home to their father, conveniently finding their stepmother dead. Some of these kids' stories are really messed up when you think about it. It's like when Snidely used to tie a girl to the railroad tracks. That's terrifying. Stepmothers were threatening because they were in a societal position to take away a child's inheritance, particularly for girls. Without their father's land or money, a child's chance of survival was drastically decreased. Much to the dismay of modern stepmothers, this stereotype has continued and remains a powerful cultural image. Disney's first full-length animated feature revamped the classic tale of Snow White.
I'm wishing for the one I love to find me today.
Doesn't it piss you off how high her voice is? She sounds like a Japanese girl.
パパもママも大賛成のアルバイトなの。私、簡単でおやつとお昼寝がついてて、お金をいっぱいくれるのがいいな。早く行こうよ。怖くないけど、この高さじゃ。高い。早く。私がやるわ。レイちゃん大丈夫？平気よ。平均台の2倍の幅よ。そうだよね。たった5倍の高さだよ。5倍。
What the hell was that? Disney's version of Snow White follows the folktale closely enough. It's a story of a sexually inexperienced girl who achieves marriage and stability by the end of the story. Look what happens when she first meets her Prince Charming.
To find me today. Oh!
Hello.
Oh!
Did I frighten you? Wait. Wait, please. Don't run away.
Chicks. It also has the evil stepmother who is threatened by Snow White's beauty. So what does she do? She asks a servant to get rid of her.
Silence! You know the penalty if you fail.
Yes, Your Majesty.
Aw man, is he gonna do it? One of these servants has to do it eventually. Come on, come on, come on.
I can't.
Damn it, he didn't do it. What the hell is wrong with these servants? How come no one can kill a kid? How hard could it be? Ugh. Anyways, you know how the story goes. She talks to animals, there's the dwarves, she takes an apple from a creepy old lady, and she becomes the perfect housewife when she's awakened by the necrophilic prince.
You'll be a woman soon, soon. You'll need a man.
What's going on, Disney? Sleeping Beauty is similar to Snow White in many ways. There's a singy, talky animal crab. She actually does chores once she leaves her natural family environment, and she gets the happy ever after final story ending with Prince Necrophiliac. But while Snow White is helped out by the dwarves, Sleeping Beauty is helped by the archetypal folk characters, the fairy godmothers. Sleeping Beauty also substitutes the wicked stepmother figure with the evil fairy. Some folk scholars believe that evil stepmothers and evil fairies were simply psychological stand-ins for the dark side of a child's natural mother, whereas fairy godmothers portrayed the good and nurturing side. Let's look at another classic folk tale, Cinderella. The evil stepmother tries to exploit the young orphan girl, and the fairy godmother teaches her how to dress right so she can bag Prince Foot Fetish. Cinderella also exemplifies another classic folk theme in that she's a poor girl who gets to marry up in society. I'm not going to get into why all this creepy prince, evil stepmother, fairy princess garbage is bad for modern day society, because there's already a lot of stuff out there. But it keeps happening. Look at the 2004 film Ella Enchanted. It has striking similarities with Cinderella. You have the evil stepmother figure, the annoying and intrusive stepsisters, the fairy godmother, and of course Prince Charming. Did they honestly think people were going to watch this movie just because Anne Hathaway was wearing a corset? So to recap, stories about royal orphans generally were that they were betrayed, raised by peasants, and they eventually regained their spot on the throne. And in folk tales, we see the threat of the stepmother and the overcoming of obstacles by the children, either through cleverness or through marriage. I want to go on a bit of a tangent here. Conceiving an illegitimate child has been a stigma in Western society for a long time. That's one of the reasons why in the 1500s women started wearing hoop skirts, which were partially created to hide a pregnancy. Some of them were made using whale bones, and they could easily hide a child. They were enormous and impractical, but some women also thought it might decrease the frequency of sexual assault, since it would take a man so long to take it off. Anyways, if you ever wondered why girls sometimes wear these stupid skirts, that's one of the reasons why. The 1800s saw literature become increasingly sophisticated. In 1847, Charlotte Bronte published Jane Eyre, and Emily Bronte published Wuthering Heights, two of the greatest English novels of all time. Okay, so I have to admit I haven't actually read Jane Eyre. This orphan project's taken over my life, there's other stuff I want to do. Anyways, I did a Wikipedia search, just keep in mind this is an amateur project. Jane's a young orphan, and she is mistreated by her aunt and cousins, especially after her uncle dies. They send her away to Lowood School, where she is also mistreated, but we start to identify with her as a strong female character who is both blunt and compassionate. Jane faces other challenges, she becomes a school teacher, and eventually she falls for the brooding and moody Mr. Rochester. On the day of their wedding, Jane finds out that Rochester is already married, and he is keeping his crazy wife locked up in his attic. But Jane still loves him. Conveniently, Rochester's first wife kills herself, and the two psychopaths are free to get married and live happily ever after. Rochester is what you would call a Byronic hero, meaning that chicks like him because he's messed up. This all started with George Gordon Lord Byron. Girls liked him because he had a messed up foot or something, and he wrote about Greece. I don't know. Other Byronic heroes include Darcy from Pride and Prejudice, and Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights. Heathcliff is an orphan in the truest sense because we never figure out who his parents are, although we assume he's some sort of gypsy. Anyways, he's a pretty unhinged character, he abuses everyone around him, and he has an unhealthy passion for Catherine Earnshaw. Heathcliff's moral flexibility as a character laid the ground for other orphan literary figures who live on the edge. Literature in the 1800s began to move away from the ideas of fairy godmothers and abandoned princes to a more gritty and realistic portrayal of what life for orphans was actually like. Although this movement was cross-cultural, to get a good idea of what I'm talking about, you have to look at the granddaddy of it all, Chuck Dickens.